Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere hot, dry, and older than most recorded complaints about morning breath. You're waking up in ancient Thebes sometime around 1500 BCE. The sky is already tinged with gold, and the air hums with the quiet buzz of flies and distant oxen hooves. You're lying on a woven reed mat, your head sticky with dreams, and the unmistakable scent of crushed lotus and dust. The walls around you are made of mud brick, cool to the touch, but already warming. A sliver of sunlight creeps through a linen curtain, and it lands right on your open mouth. You smack your lips. Bad idea. Your tongue hits something chalky sour and oddly chewy. You've either been grinding your teeth all night or yesterday's beer bread is staging a comeback. Your mouth feels like it's spent the night licking the inside of a clay jar. You sit up groaning just a little. Your joints protest and your knees crack. You stretch, yawn, and then there it is. That awful taste again. You need to clean your mouth badly. But remember, you're an Egyptian peasant, not a modern minty fresh toothpaste connoisseur. No Colgate here, just dust sticks and hope. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You toss on your simple linen tunic and shuffle outside. The sand already feels warm underfoot. Around you, Thebes stirs. A girl hurries with a jar of milk. A dog chases something invisible. And a boy scrapes dried dung into a basket. Domestic bliss. But your mission is clear. Get that awful taste out of your mouth before breakfast. You trudge toward the courtyard where your uncle, a part-time scribe and full-time self-proclaimed tooth expert, is waiting. He greets you with a yawn and a bowl. You peek in. Ah, the family toothpaste. It's a powder grayish, a little sparkly in the sunlight. You recognize the scent, a combination of burnt eggshells, ground pumice, and what might be ox hooves. It smells like someone tried to make incense out of a bonfire. You pinch a bit between your fingers, gritty, dry. Probably invented by someone who wanted their enemies to suffer, but it became a tradition instead. You scoop some into your mouth and begin rubbing it around with your finger. Your gums scream. Your tongue weeps. Somewhere inside your skull, your molars register a formal complaint. Still, it's doing something. The sourness is gone, replaced by a sharp mineral sting that tastes like regret and limestone. And this, dear listener, is your daily dental routine, at least for now. Crushed rocks, ashes, and burnt animal parts. The ancient Egyptians believed in spiritual cleanliness, but they also had a real thing for physical purity. Your teeth were part of your offering to the gods, or to at least not offend the guy selling fish at the market. You rinse with a sip of water from a ceramic jug. It's lukewarm and slightly gritty. Of course it is. Around you, the morning thickens. Donkeys bray. A woman argues with a goose. Somewhere nearby, a priest chants at the rising sun. You, however, are still spitting gray sludge into the sand, wondering if this is what it means to be alive. And here's a fun bit of trivia to chew on, pun intended. Historians still argue whether this early toothpaste was more harmful than helpful. Sure, it scrubbed off food residue, but it also likely wore down enamel like sandpaper, which, considering your bread was also full of sand from stone-ground flour, means your teeth were constantly under attack from the inside and out. And yet somehow Egyptians kept doing it, morning after morning. with the devotion of a cat returning to a sunbeam. Was it tradition, religion, or just a communal agreement that if you're going to smell like fish and sweat all day, you could at least pretend your breath was okay? Somewhere nearby, a boy sneezes and drops a clay jar. It shatters with a satisfying crunch, echoing the sound of your own mold. You follow the smoke, not the fragrant kind from temple incense, but the sharp, acrid curl from a neighbor's outdoor hearth. That's where today's toothpaste is being made, or more accurately scorched into existence. The ingredients aren't so much measured as guessed. A pinch of ash from yesterday's fire, a chunk of burnt ox hoof, some bits of dried eggshell from last week's offerings. One woman swears by charred donkey hair. Another insists on adding a hint of mint, though mint in this case is a wild herb that smells slightly less like a goat. You crouch beside the fire, watching as the mixture sizzles in a shallow stone bowl. The woman stirring it, your aunt possibly, or someone's aunt, waves the smoke away with a fan made of woven reeds. Her fingers are stained with soot. Her expression is that of someone who's done this every day since childhood, and will keep doing it until the gods decide otherwise. She sprinkles in some rock salt, grinds it all with a pestle, and scoops the finished powder into a clay pot. It glitters faintly. This is your dental destiny. You take a moment to admire the sheer creativity or madness that went into this concoction. Crushed pumice, ground ox hooves, ashes from burnt bread, maybe even some charred oyster shell if the market was generous. It's like someone looked at the campfire remains and said, "Let's put this in our mouths." Historians still argue whether these ingredients were chosen for their antibacterial properties or simply because they were there. What's certain is that ancient Egyptians took their oral hygiene seriously, more seriously than some modern humans, with their half-hearted flossing and guilt-ridden mouthwash. You scoop some of the warm powder onto your palm. It's hot, gritty, and smells like someone tried to bake a bone. You grimace, then dab a wet finger into the paste and begin to rub it against your teeth. There's no minty freshness here, no foam, just the rough scrape of minerals against enamel, like cleaning a window with sandpaper. You can feel it working, or destroying. It's hard to tell. Beside you, the ant hybrid chuckles. "Good for the gods," she says, patting your shoulder. "Also keep your breath from killing flies." You're not entirely sure she's joking. The burning sensation spreads. Your gums tingle. You rinse with a gourd of water that tastes faintly of garlic and regret. But it's done. Your teeth are clean, or at least aggressively scrubbed. And this morning ritual wasn't limited to peasants. Even wealthier Egyptians used similar recipes, though their powders were stored in painted alabaster jars and applied with slightly more dignity. The wealthy might have added myrrh or frankincense for flavor. Some even mixed in crushed pearls, because what says I love my teeth more than brushing them with jewelry? There's an old papyrus that lists dental complaints from workers at Deir el Medina, the village of tomb builders. It mentions bleeding gums, cracked molars, and a mysterious condition translated as tooth ghosts. Scholars still debate whether this was metaphorical pain or a literal belief in molar-haunting spirits. Either way, the Egyptians were aware that brushing with volcanic grit wasn't exactly gentle, but the alternative, rotting teeth, foul breath, and social shame was worse. So they persisted, they burned, they crushed, they brushed. Some even combined these powders with vinegar or honey. Imagine that blend: acidic sting, sweet rot, and burnt hoof. Not a flavor you'll find in a toothpaste commercial anytime soon. You wander back to your house, your teeth still ringing from the experience. Along the way, you pass a vendor selling dried dates and fresh cucumbers. Your mouth waters, but also flinches. Chewing sounds risky right now. In the shade of a sycamore fig, you spot an older man carefully cleaning his teeth with what looks like a twig. He dips it into a small jar and scrubs with slow, practiced movements. He notices you watching and gives a gap-toothed grin. Crushed rock keeps the demons out, he says. You're not sure which demons he means. Cavities, maybe, or the metaphorical kind. Either way, your gums are buzzing. Your breath smells vaguely of burnt toast and salted gravel. You've joined a millennia-old club, those who chose the pain of prevention over the agony of decay. Somewhere, a priest begins chanting the morning offering. You sit down, sip some barley beer, warm of course. The man with the twig isn't done. He holds it out to you, wordlessly. It's not just any stick, it's from the arak tree, prized for its natural antimicrobial properties, or so the elders say. The end is frayed like a miniature broom. You take it, give it a tentative sniff. It smells earthy, with a hint of peppery sap, then chew gently. The fibers soften in your mouth. You feel like a goat, gnawing on kindling, but eventually it becomes functional. Primitive, yes, but strangely effective. You use the twig to work loose a stubborn bit of barley bread from between your molars. Victory. No toothbrushes here, of course. The arak stick is your toothbrush toothpick, and breath mint all in one, nature's original multi-tool. And you'll find them everywhere, tucked behind ears, hanging from belts, and even blessed by priests on feast days. They're the unsung heroes of oral hygiene, passed down through generations, like the family soup pot or a very sturdy curse. Historians agree that the Egyptians didn't invent the chew stick, but they certainly perfected the practice. Some argue that its widespread use in ancient Egypt influenced later Islamic hygiene practices. Others believe the idea arose independently in multiple regions because, honestly, all you need is a stick and a bit of frustration with something lodged in your teeth. You chew and scrub, chew and scrub. The action is rhythmic and meditative. In a way, it's like praying with your jaw. By now, your mouth feels less like a battlefield and more like a mildly over-scrubbed temple, which, given the Egyptian obsession with ritual purity, is entirely appropriate. Nearby, a young girl leans against a sun-warmed wall, mimicking your movements with her twig. She watches you with a grin that reveals several missing teeth. Whether from age, sugarcane, or enthusiastic brushing, it's hard to tell. She holds up her twig like a trophy. You give a solemn nod. Respect. Of course, not all sticks were created equal. The arak tree was preferred. But in a pinch, people used palm fronds, tamarisk branches, or whatever semi-flexible wood they could find. Some coated the tip in crushed minerals or resins for added cleaning power, or just to make the experience slightly less like chewing on furniture. A traveling merchant once claimed to have sticks from trees that grew only near the first cataract of the Nile, infused with divine energy and invisible scorpions. You didn't buy any, but your cousin did, and he claimed they gave him dreams of Sekhmet, whispering dental secrets. You suspect the dreams were from the fermented fig juice he drank at the time. Still, the chew stick persists. It's portable, it doesn't require water, and best of all, it doesn't shatter your enamel like the crushed rocks do. Your gums may still protest, but your teeth, they're getting cleaner one chewed twig at a time. You spit out a splinter. It lands near a lizard sunning itself on the wall. The lizard stares at you with the disdain of something that has perfect, ever-regenerating teeth. Somewhere overhead, an ibis lets out a croak. You take that as a sign to move along. You tuck the now softened twig behind your ear, just like the old man did. The sun is climbing. Your mouth is raw but fresh-ish. And though there's still a faint aftertaste of bark and bitterness, it beats the alternative. As you head toward the workshop district, you pass a cart carrying bundles of chew sticks, tied with twine ready for market. The vendor calls out their virtues like a bard. Clean teeth, strong breath. Kisses that won't kill. It's oddly poetic. One customer, a baker with flour on her forehead, selects a bundle and sniffs each stick like she's picking the finest cuts of meat. She explains to no one in particular that she prefers auroch with darker bark, more bite, less bitterness. You nod as if you understand. This is a world where oral hygiene isn't a side note. It's part of life, part of ritual, and even part of the trade. And yet, historians still argue whether the chew stick was truly effective against the real enemies, cavities, infections, and abscesses. Some mummies suggest success. Others, not so much. But effectiveness aside, it's the intention that counts, isn't it? To wake up. Chew a twig and face another day in the dust with a mouth that's at least trying to be holy. You stop at a well, rinse out your mouth with a scoop of warm water, and smile at your reflection. It's crooked. There's a seed stuck in your front tooth, but it's yours. The sun is higher now, blinding, as it reflects off the pale mud walls around you. Your jaw still aches faintly from the morning chew in your breath. Well, it no longer frightens birds, so you count that as a win. You head toward the scribal district. An odd choice for dental care, you might think. But in ancient Egypt, lines between professions were often blurry. Your destination is a man called Seneb scribe, by training herbalist by passion, and dentist only when he has to be. His reed pens are always stained. His breath smells of fennel and onions, and he claims to have once pulled a general's molar with nothing but a fishhook and steady hands. You find him in his shaded courtyard hunched over a papyrus scroll. He's muttering to himself in a mix of hieratic script and complaints about taxes. Nearby, a small table holds a few dental tools, bronze tweezers, sharpened flint flakes, and a peculiarly curved hook you deeply hope he never uses on you. He looks up, squints, and gestures for you to sit. You obey, slightly regretting every choice that led to this moment. Open, he says. You do. He pokes. He prods. He makes a non-committal grunt that could mean anything from, "You'll be fine," to start writing your will. Then he leans back and announces, "You've got a small abscess forming. I can lance it. Or we can try the root paste." Neither option sounds pleasant, but you nod. He begins preparing a thick, greenish substance that smells like crushed garlic and something recently deceased. Mint and onion poultice, he explains. Also, some honey. The bees know things. Historians still debate the exact training of practitioners like Seneb. Were they true dentists, quack healers, or simply literate men who happened to know a few things about abscesses and weren't afraid of blood? Some scrolls describe tooth physicians of the palace, which sounds impressively official. Others suggest that most dental care was handled at home by family midwives or whoever had the firmest grip and the highest tolerance for screaming. Seneb is both gentler and rougher than expected. He applies the paste murmurs a few lines, invoking Sekhmet's healing powers, and offers you a stick to bite down on while the paste does its work. It tingles, then burns, then tingles again. You don't know if it's helping, but at least you're distracted. As you sit jaw clenched, you glance around his courtyard. Dried herbs hang from the rafters, thyme, basil, and coriander. Not for cooking, he says, for rinsing. Boiled and strained, they make a good mouthwash. Sometimes he adds beer. Not for flavor, he insists. For fermentation. Somewhere in the corner lies a small clay statue of Thoth, the god of wisdom scribes, and apparently dental records. A tiny inscription at the base reads, "He who soothes the aching tooth shall write his name in the stars." You suspect Seneb wrote that himself. He finishes with a gentle tap on your cheek. "Come back in 2 days," he says. "Unless your face swells like a melon, then come sooner." You thank him with a slight bow and a mouth that feels like it's full of hot sand. Back in the street, your lips feel strange, half numb and buzzing. You pass another patient heading in a trader with a gold earring and the nervous gait of a man who's recently tried to self-extract a molar. He carries a cloth bundle payment, perhaps. Seneb accepts onions, fish, and occasionally a carved amulet if the pain is particularly memorable. This, too, is part of Egyptian life. Pain, remedies, a stubborn belief that the gods help those who chew sticks and apply poultices. You stop at a shady spot and sit for a moment. A boy selling lotus oil walks past, chanting prices. You watch the crowd, your mouth slowly cooling, and genuinely marvel at how everyday people just coped. With no anesthesia, no numbing gel, no glowing sign that says dentist, with a waiting room full of magazines. They had Seneb, they had garlic paste, they had courage. Historians still argue about how effective these treatments were. But you're a walking, throbbing testament to the fact that trying was better than nothing. You lean your head back against the sun-warmed wall, eyes closed. Somewhere a heart begins to play, and for now you don't think about the next infection, or the next crushed bone, or the next prayer whispered through gritted teeth. You just breathe and hope Thoth is listening. You wake from your wall-side doze to the smell of resin and something vaguely sweet. A young girl passes by carrying a shallow dish, and in it are tiny nuggets, deep amber, slightly sticky smelling of myrrh. She offers you one without speaking, as if this is a perfectly normal midday ritual. You take it cautiously, sniff it, and pop it into your mouth. It tastes ancient, like burnt tree sap earth and old temples. It clings to your molars, a mix of bitter and sweet, a bit like trying to chew incense. This is how you freshen your breath in Thebes, myrrh gum. Not for everyone, but then again, neither is morning. You chew slowly, letting it dissolve on your tongue. It's not exactly refreshing, but it's oddly grounding. A blend of taste and texture that lingers. Around you, others do the same. Merchants, priests, and children. It's communal, it's sacred, and also slightly gross if you think about it. The ancient Egyptians placed a high value on sweet breath, not just for social reasons, but for spiritual ones. Bad breath was seen as unclean, a sign that the soul might also be rotting. Charming. So they reached for what they had: myrrh, frankincense, cinnamon bark, and even clumps of natron, a mineral mix also used in mummification. One scroll suggests mixing natron with honey and rubbing it directly on the gums. You try not to imagine how that must have felt. You wander past a temple wall, its surface cool and etched with faded scenes of gods and rituals. A carved priest raises what looks like a flower to a supplicant's face. Is it a lotus? A perfume? A breath test? A group of novices walks by, robes swishing, each chewing deliberately. One of them coughs and spits something unidentifiable into a jar. Hygiene in motion. Myrrh was more than a breath aid. It was a spiritual cleanser, too, used in rituals, offerings, and burials. The idea was that if it was good enough for the dead, it was good enough for the mouth. You pause at a small shrine to Thoth. A half-burned incense stick smolders beside a bowl of offerings, dates, figs, and another pile of resin chunks. You offer a silent nod. Thanks for not letting your jaw fall off yet. Historians still debate whether Egyptians used these substances daily or reserved them for special occasions. Festivals, ceremonies, or dates with someone whose opinion of your breath mattered. But they valued freshness, or at least not smelling like garlic-drenched despair. You wander through the marketplace, now the sun glaring off every surface. You pass a stall selling perfume oils of blue lotus, sweet rush, and cedar. A well-dressed man samples a scent and then breathes theatrically onto his palm, sniffing it like a wine connoisseur. He grimaces and dabs a little more. A woman nearby is selling what she claims is a kiss stone, a small, polished pebble that, when licked, sweetens the breath. You can't tell if she's joking. You hope she's joking. You stop at a potter's cart and admire a series of little jars labeled with hieratic script. One, you're told, holds a blend of crushed mint and powdered charcoal. Another has dried date paste mixed with cloves, rare and expensive. For lovers, the potter says with a wink. You nod, pretending to understand. Later, you try a small lump of acacia resin, another ancient favorite. It clings to your teeth like guilt, but it leaves your breath smelling vaguely medicinal. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder how anyone kissed anyone back then. The answer probably is carefully. And after chewing a lot of tree sap, you reach for a wall. You barely take 2 steps before a man grabs his jaw and groans. Not the theatrical groan of someone who stubbed a toe, but the deep, guttural moan of someone whose molar has betrayed him. You wince in solidarity. He leans against a wall, pressing his knuckles to his face, like that might somehow banish the pain. He's not alone. Toothaches are a familiar misery here, as common as dust and just as persistent. You've had your share, and you know how quickly they escalate from mild discomfort to full-blown facial swelling, like your cheeks trying to escape the rest of your skull. This man's friend suggests something ominously referred to as the crocodile poultice. You've heard of it before. It's one of those folk remedies that lives somewhere between desperation and superstition. The recipe: a mash of dried crocodile dung, fig sap, honey, and a few drops of beer, because apparently even tooth medicine needs to party a little. You follow at a distance as the man limps toward a healer's hut. The doorway is marked with a crude symbol, a tooth with lines radiating from it. Pain lines, presumably. Inside shelves overflow with clay jars, baskets of dried herbs, and tiny flasks of things better left unexamined. A woman greets him, her hands already stained with some greenish mixture. She doesn't ask questions, just gestures toward a mat and gets to work. She applies a compress to the side of his face, something warm, wet, and faintly sulfurous. You catch the scent and involuntarily take a step back. It smells like something that once lived and very much died. She mutters a prayer, ties the compress in place, and blows a pinch of dried mint into the air. Ritual or air freshener? Hard to say. Historians still debate how seriously such treatments were taken. Some argue they were deeply tied to religious practice. Pain as a spiritual imbalance, requiring both herbs and hymns. Others believe many of these remedies were a placebo at best and painful distractions at worst. Either way, the crocodile poultice has survived in texts for a reason. Someone believed in it, or at least told enough people it worked. You try not to look judgmental. After all, what do you have? Crushed rocks and a half-chewed twig behind your ear. Still, not every solution is so organic. In some wealthier homes, there are tiny metal instruments, hooks, tweezers, probes, used for poking and prodding teeth. One scroll even mentions a type of drill, though the exact method is lost to time. You imagine a terrified noble holding still, while a servant spins something between his palms, like a fire starter, inching it toward an inflamed incisor. No wonder offerings to the gods included pleas for painless deaths. Sometimes they didn't even try to fix the tooth. They chanted loudly, over and over, believing that sound vibration could ease the pain. One hymn supposedly was designed to shake the demon from the root. You've heard it sung once by a blind harpist with 3 teeth and the lungs of a deity. You're still not sure if it helped the man he sang to, but it scared off a few pigeons. Some folks just gave up and yanked the offending tooth with a fish hook, or looped twine, followed by a shot of fermented pomegranate juice and a long nap in the shade. Brutal. Fast. Final. The man with the compress finally exits, looking like someone socked him with a clay tablet. His jaw is wrapped in linen. His eyes are glassy. He gives a dazed nod as he passes you and mumbles something about the burning wasn't that bad. You don't ask. Instead, you head toward the riverbank, where a group of women is preparing herbal rinses. The scent of chamomile and thyme drifts in the breeze. One woman stirs a pot of hot water and tosses in crushed fenugreek. Another adds vinegar and honey to a smaller pot, swearing by its cooling effect on angry teeth. You're offered a cup of tea. It's warm bitter and makes your tongue recoil, but your gums sigh. Maybe it's working. Or maybe it's just nice to be around people who try. Toothaches may have been a universal curse, but so was the human urge to fight back. With herbs rituals or crocodile dung, the Egyptians weren't about to let a molar ruin their day without at least trying something strange. You spit into the reeds and thank the river. By now, the sun is floating directly above, turning every stone pot and scalp into a reluctant oven. You find a narrow alleyway for shade where the air is thick with the scent of perfumes and roasted chickpeas. This part of Thebes smells richer, less of dung, more of incense. You've wandered into the part of town where the upper class polishes their sandals and hires someone else to worry about their teeth. You pass a high gate, painted with lapis blue stripes, and guarded by a man who hasn't smiled in years. Beyond it is the estate of a vizier, a man whose breath presumably never offends. His home has tiled floors, cool stone benches, and servants who sweep sand away like it's an insult. You pause at the edge, half invited by the scent of rosewater and something vaguely minty in the breeze. A house servant passes with a lacquered box tucked under her arm. It's open briefly, and inside are neat rows of golden toothpicks, yes, golden. They shine like tiny sunbeams. Not for fighting cavities, of course, but for flicking pomegranate seeds from between royal molars. You edge closer, watching, as a well-dressed woman dips a slender ivory stick into a jar of scented oil. She passes it slowly between her teeth, then hands it to a waiting girl to be cleaned and stored. This isn't hygiene, it's ceremony. Oral elegance. In this world, dental care isn't just about not dying of an abscess. It's about displaying refinement, status, and control. The vizier, you're told, has a carved onyx box that holds dried mint leaves, myrrh resin, powdered cinnamon, and the occasional scrap of linen infused with lotus oil for mouth pressing, a gentler kind of brushing reserved for noble jaws. One tablet found in a noble's tomb even included instructions for morning grooming. Rise with rinse with natron press, mouth, with sweet cloth, and kiss no one before Thoth is thanked. You wonder if he followed that to the letter. Maybe that's why his wives look so bored in the tomb paintings. Historians still debate how widespread this elite dental ritual was. Some argue it was reserved for the topmost tiers, the priests, the scribes, the courtiers. Others suggest even modestly wealthy families aspired to these habits, if only on festival days. You're told of a noblewoman, Lady Tayet, whose tooth powder included ground pearls and crushed acacia seeds. Her breath, they claimed, smelled like dawn. Her bite, however, was lethal. Rumor says she once cracked a date stone and broke her crown. She wore it as a necklace afterward. Another servant sweeps by with a tray of small bronze tools, hooks, scrapers, and tiny spoons. They look surgical, almost threatening. You're informed they're for gentle plaque removal, supervised by temple physicians. Because if Ra could purify the sun each day, surely you could purify a molar. In a shaded corner, a child scrubs her teeth with a pale reed dipped in honeyed vinegar. She spits into a gold basin, then checks her smile in a polished copper mirror. Her tutor nods approvingly and makes a note on a wax tablet. Dental excellence starts young. You step back, re-entering your dusty, democratic world of chew sticks and onion poultices. The elite may have the gloss and gleam, but you've got grit, literally. Still, it's hard not to feel a twinge of envy watching someone else's servant carry their breath-freshening bundle of myrrh-soaked linen and wild mint resin. It must be nice to outsource your jaw pain. A cart rumbles past, carrying bundles of reeds and boxes labeled with hieratic symbols for breath and cleansing. Supply runs, probably. Even the rich can't grow their cinnamon in this heat. You sip warm water from your flask, letting it swish gently through your sore gums. The gold toothpicks glimmer in your mind's eye, impractical, excessive, but dazzling nonetheless. Then a beetle crawls across your sandal, and you remember everyone. No matter how golden their smile eventually ends up in the same tomb, hopefully with a decent toothbrush. You leave the elite district behind, ducking once more into the noise and dust of the city's baking heart. Your steps crunch over gravel, which isn't unusual. What's unsettling is that so does your bread. You stop by a street vendor selling flat loaves, their surfaces browned and crisp stacked like clay tablets on a reed mat. You're hungry, of course, but you also know what's coming. You tear a piece from the corner and bite down carefully, very carefully. And there it is, the crunch. Not from crust or seed or anything that should be in a nice soft loaf. No. That sound is sand, invisible, persistent, and everywhere. Historians have long noted this ancient Egyptian bread was dangerous, not because it was undercooked or poisoned, though there were occasional outbreaks of mold, but because it was gritty. The culprit, the grinding stones. Bakers used flat hand-operated querns made from sandstone or granite. Over time, bits of the stone would flake off and mix with the flour. It was subtle at first, a mild scratch, a suspicious crunch, but over a lifetime, tooth erosion, cracks, pits, gaps that are filled with pain. Even the softest bread was hiding tiny daggers. You chew slowly, deliberately, as if eating a bowl of pebbles. A boy nearby does the same, his face stoic, his jaw trained for this. You wonder if Egyptian parents ever warned their kids, "Don't bite too hard, or you'll end up at Seneb's with your cheek swollen like a goat bladder." Your teeth aren't the only ones that suffer. Analyses of mummified skulls show extensive wear on flat molars, ground nearly to the gum enamel, scraped thin as papyrus. And it wasn't just the poor. Even royals fed the best wheat available weren't spared. You pass a bakery where women knead dough in wide terracotta bowls. One of them adds what looks like crushed dates and sesame delicious. The other adds what looks like extra flour. You sigh. You know what that means. The baker offers you a steaming new loaf, dusted with what you hope is barley, and not the dreams of your future dental agony. You smile politely and decline. Your gums are still recovering from this morning. The real danger, historians argue, wasn't sugar, which was scarce, or wine, which was often watered down, but the grind. Literally. It wasn't that Egyptians had bad dental hygiene. They brushed, rinsed, chewed, and poulticed with passion. It's that their food was fighting back. You wander through the milling district where slabs of stone lean against crumbling walls. Women crouch beside circular querns, rhythmically pushing a top stone across the bottom, grinding grain with the same motion repeated thousands of times per day. You watch the dust rising from the flour pile. It glitters slightly in the sun. That's not poetic, it's stone grit. You imagine it swirling into the dough, embedding itself, like future regret baking into each golden loaf. Bread was sacred here, called life in the hieroglyphs, offered to the gods, and painted lovingly in tomb murals. But it was also the silent assassin of Egyptian mouths. A man nearby spits into the dust. His teeth are dark, his gums receding, but he grins as he tears into his loaf like nothing's wrong. Maybe it's pride, or hunger, or the simple understanding that in this place, food is sacred even if it bites back. You take another small bite. It's softer now, closer to the center. Still a little crunch. Still a mild sense of betrayal. But you chew. Because that's what people have always done. You think back to that chew stick behind your ear. To the toothpaste that felt like punishment. To the crocodile poultice and the gold toothpicks. And the child with her mouth mirror tutor. And now to this, the gritty bread that no amount of mouthwash could ever forgive. Even now, with the tools they had, you begin to admire their determination. They faced daily dental sabotage and still smiled in murals. You wash the bread down with a sip of cool water, rubbing your molars gently with your tongue. It's not much, but it helps. You walk on the market, buzzing behind you, a little more careful now with every bite. And you wonder how you're still thinking about bread when you pass a wall covered in painted figures. Men in profile, their shoulders squared, lips parted in eternal conversation. One of them grins broadly. His teeth, of course, are perfect. Too perfect. Gleaming white, evenly spaced, unmarred by grit or time. You squint at him suspicious, because you've seen actual skulls. You've seen the truth-worn molars exposed, nerves, abscesses that tunneled into bone. You've seen what happened when chew sticks and burned hoof powder just weren't enough. And yet, here in paint and plaster, everyone smiles like a goddess just whispered a joke in their ear. It's the great lie of Egyptian tomb art immaculate teeth. Not because they existed, but because they were aspirational. just like perfect hair, glowing skin, or those absurdly long, delicate fingers. You pause. Beneath the mural shading your eyes, a scribe walks past, grumbling to himself about spacing and pigment ratios. He's carrying a wooden palette with 6 shades of red, none of which you're certain are inflamed gum. You ask him gently why the teeth look so flawless. He shrugs. Would you want to spend eternity with a crooked smile? Fair point. In tombs, the dead were idealized not just spiritually but cosmetically. A toothless farmer might be painted with a full set of ivory white chompers. A noble woman with receding gums might be remembered with a mouth soft as lotus petals. After all, these weren't portraits. They were forever selves. Historians still puzzle over this contradiction. We have the physical evidence of dental hardship, archaeological digs full of ground-down jaws and fossilized toothaches, but the artistic record tells a different story. A story of smiles so wide they could host pigeons, and yet it makes sense. In a culture obsessed with the afterlife, the body had to be perfect. The better your depiction, the better your odds of impressing the gods. A chipped incisor might suggest a moral flaw. A crooked molar might call into question your devotion. Or worse, your cleanliness. So the artist lied. But kindly, you remember a tomb painting where a man and woman stand together, hands clasped, smiles radiantly. She offers him a lotus. He offers her eternity. And both are beaming teeth like river pearls. But they're actual mummies found decades later. She'd lost her front teeth long before death. He had an abscess the size of a date pit. Romantic, isn't it? You step inside a cool chamber carved into limestone. It's a memorial chapel still visited by locals who leave food and coins near the statue of the deceased. You study the carved face, serene, powerful. And again, those flawless teeth. Even in stone, the lie holds. A priest lights incense. The air fills with smoke and perfume. Someone chants a hymn. You close your eyes and imagine the dead listening, smiling with perfect mouths they never had in life. Maybe that's what art is for. Not to capture the truth, but to soothe it. You sit in the shade of the tomb, chewing quietly on a date. No sand this time, just sweet, sticky pulp and a pit that threatens your molars. You suck the flesh off, gently mindful of your now slightly tender jaw. You think of the girl with missing teeth, the noble with her pearl-infused tooth powder, the man with a jaw full of honey-soaked bandages. And now this a painted lie that almost makes you forget the pain. Outside the tomb, the air is heavier now, thick with midday heat and the scent of melting bitumen from a nearby builder's cart. You walk slowly, seeking shade as your sandals kick up lazy puffs of dust. You've had crushed rocks in your mouth, burned hoof powder myrrh, resin, and bread with the texture of gravel. And yet nothing has prepared your tongue for what lies ahead, temple cleanliness. You're passing the precinct of a major temple now. Tall columns etched with hymns rise into the sun like petrified tree trunks. Inside, everything is hushed, cool, and oddly damp. A small priest with startlingly clean fingernails ushers you into an antechamber reserved for ritual purity. Here, hygiene is not a personal matter. It's divine business. You're handed a damp cloth soaked in lotus and natron. It smells like old river water and moonlight. The priest mimes how to wipe your mouth, including the tongue. You comply, scraping gently. It's not pleasant. Your tongue feels like it's being erased. But this isn't about comfort. This is about preparing to enter the sacred presence without offending with garlic breath or temple unworthy plaque. Tongue scraping wasn't just a quirk of priests. Texts mention it as part of daily ablutions, especially before prayer meals or meetings with nobles. Some used tiny bronze scrapers. Others used the edge of a reed or a cloth soaked in vinegar and salt. The goal was simple a mouth worthy of Maat, the principle of truth, order, and harmony. You gag a little as the priest offers you a cup of rinse made from boiled fenugreek and pine resin. It's bitter. It makes your eyes water, but afterward your mouth feels oddly cold, clean, like the inside of a well-polished jar. Speak now, the priest says, and the gods will not recoil. You try to thank him, but your tongue still stings. You settle for a nod. Historians still debate how much of this ritual cleanliness was symbolic versus genuinely medical. Some argue that it was about spiritual readiness. Mouths that spoke to the gods must be untainted. Others suggest the Egyptians intuited that oral bacteria had real consequences and took every step available to keep them at bay. Whatever the reason, priests often led the charge when it came to cleanliness, and their teeth, according to some mummified remains, fared better than average. You're guided through to the temple's inner courtyard, where a scribe records daily offerings, and a novice chants the list of items to be cleansed: oil jars, bread, lotus garlands, and yes, mouths. You spot a pile of used clothes drying in the sun, their once white linen, now stained with residue from hundreds of sacred tongues. One of the older priests dips a stick into a tiny jar of natron paste and casually scrapes at his molars, while listening to a junior report the day's incense usage. Multitasking sacred edition. Nearby, a basin of water reflects the ceiling's golden glow. You lean over it and glimpse your reflection, sweaty, dust-covered, with teeth that are slightly less terrible than they were at dawn. You rinse again. The water is warm, slightly salty, and probably blessed 3 times this morning. And then you sit, letting your sore jaw rest, surrounded by cool stone and soft chanting. You think back on the journey so far, the burn of ox hoof powder, the comforting scrape of the chew stick, the ache of too hard bread, and now the ritual sting of natron and pine resin. Your teeth have been through a pilgrimage of their own, and this moment, seated in the hush of a temple, your mouth tingling with a sacred rinse, feels like a strange kind of reward. You lean back against the stone. The ceiling arches high above, painted with stars. Somewhere behind the wall, someone is lying. You head back toward the residential quarters. Now your steps slow and thoughtful, your breath laced faintly with clove. The air is softening, still hot, but with a sleepy kind of warmth that says the Nile breeze will return soon. You follow a winding path between mud brick homes, each one whispering with its scent lentils, sweat sandalwood, and somehow ashes. Everywhere the markers of life and love. Outside, one modest house, a man leans against the door frame, his fingers nervously drumming on a pot of date wine. His hair is neatly combed. His tunic smells faintly of juniper. He's waiting. Inside, a woman sits in front of a polished shard of copper, rubbing powdered resin across her gums. She dips a cloth in rose water, presses it to her tongue, then uses a sliver of palm reed to sweep her teeth. There's no wedding, no formal ritual, just the quiet intensity of preparation. You linger near the window, pretending not to eavesdrop again, and catch a glimpse of her mouth as she rinses. The water in her bowl swirls with flecks of white and gold. Crushed barley, maybe, or dried mouse bone. You've heard of that one. A strange ingredient found in a recipe written on a scrap of medical papyrus. For firm teeth and sweet breath, grind dried mouse bones with honey and apply to the tooth with a stick of tamarisk. Historians still argue whether the mouse part was literal or symbolic. Either way, it made its way into ritual and somehow into romance. She smiles at herself in the mirror. It's not perfect, but it's careful. Earnest, honest. You wander on, turning into a quieter lane, where a scribe is reciting poetry to a crowd of 3 and a dog. His voice is smooth as oiled papyrus. My love is near her breath, like the breeze off a lotus bloom, though no blossom stings my lips so sweetly. The crowd chuckles. Someone mutters, must be chewing myrrh again. Romantic imagery in ancient Egypt wasn't shy about the breast. Love poems praised not just eyes or hips or voice, but the freshness of the mouth. In one poem, a lover proclaims he'd trade his sandals just for a kiss before her mouth forgets the myrrh. You think about that, about a world where the sweet breath was both intimate and sacred, where kissing wasn't just affection, it was alignment, harmony, a silent, perfumed offering. And you remember Seneb's offhand comment about teeth being the gateway to truth. It seemed dramatic then. Now it feels not untrue. You pass a couple sitting together on a flat roof, their feet dangling over the edge, each holding a reed dipped in some sort of paste. They're brushing silently side by side. You don't interrupt. It's a strangely tender scene. At a nearby courtyard, a grandmother helps her granddaughter rinse her mouth with a lukewarm herbal brew. The girl spits it out, giggling. The woman tells her, the gods don't listen to smelly prayers. You smile. Maybe they're right. There's a comfort in all this, watching people clean, rinse, chew, spit, flirt, and try. Not perfectly, not always effective, but persistently. Even with bad tools and worse bread, they believed that a clean mouth was more than just pleasant. It was meaningful, a kind of self-respect, a kind of gift, a preparation for the gods, for the world, for each other. You pause beneath a fig tree, listening to the lazy flapping of linen, drying on a line. The sun dapples the ground. You rest your back against the trunk and close your eyes. Your mouth still tingles faintly with vinegar and clove. And though your gums feel like they've been scoured by river pebbles, there's also a quiet pride blooming in your chest. You've walked through powders and poultices, poems and pain, gold and grit. And somehow at the end of it, your teeth are still your own. Crooked, sore, but yours. The fig tree shades your shoulders like a canopy woven from silence and syrupy leaves. You stay there for a moment longer, half hidden, watching a group of traders unload goods from a barge moored along the Nile's edge. Among the woven baskets and bundles of cloth, something gleams ivory. Not elephant tusks as you first expect. These are smaller, smoother, and shaped into delicate sticks and tiny scoops. One merchant calls out imported tools, Nubian craft, good for mouths and charms. You wander closer, curiosity tugging at your feet. The trader catches your glance and beams. Tooth tools, he says, from the far south. They polish them with sand, then oil them in fig sap. Stronger than wood, gentler too. He holds one out. Its light warm from the sun. Perfectly smooth, carved with a faint spiral at the handle. You imagine using it in place of your chew stick Less splinters, more style. You test it against your teeth. It works surprisingly well. The gentle scraping feels less like punishment and more like a whisper. Imported goods like these weren't uncommon. Egypt, ever the hub of exchange, received goods from Nubia, Punt, the Levant, and beyond. Along with spices and gold came knowledge, herbal lore, grooming customs, and perhaps even new ideas about how to care for the body, including the mouth. Historians still debate how much dental influence came from these foreign contacts. Was it through trade? Marriage servants returning from distant posts? Or simply the gradual seep of habit across borders the way all things human eventually blur? The Nubians, according to some scrolls, were said to have healthier teeth, perhaps due to different milling practices or diets less heavy in grit. Perhaps they used other herbs unknown to Theban healers ground into pastes that soothed rather than scorched. The merchant leans in, lowering his voice. There's a woman in the southern hills, he says, who makes tooth powder from crushed acacia bark, mint, and a drop of lion's milk. You pause. Lion's milk. He shrugs. Or a goat. But lion sells better. You smile. Of course it does. You buy the ivory stick, not because you believe in lion's milk, but because it feels good to hold something so carefully made. You tuck it behind your ear where it sits proudly beside your old chew stick, modernity meeting memory. Later, you pass a household where a boy is practicing music on a reed flute. His older sister scolds him, then stops mid-rant to fish something from her molars with an ivory pick. She does it without thinking, like someone tucking hair behind an ear. There's elegance in that, and maybe envy. You walk on into a quieter part of town, where the buildings sag in the heat, and palm trees rustle like gossip. A wrinkled woman waves you over from her shaded porch. You chew, yet today she asks, offering a bowl of what looks like waxy pebbles. Imported, she says, winking. Punt resin. Good for kisses, better for breath. You take one and bite. It's bitter and sweet, and numbs your tongue just slightly, an unfamiliar but welcome sensation. Somewhere behind the bitterness is the echo of wild flowers and distant smoke. You sit beside her as the sun begins to lean west. She hums softly, scrapes her teeth with a sliver of shell, and hands you a strip of linen soaked in something herbal. Press this to your gums, she says. Keeps the rot away. You do, it stings, but not badly. And as you sit stranger beside elder, both breathing in the scent of foreign oils and dry fig leaves, you feel the invisible threads that connect all mouths across time and place. Everyone chews, everyone rinses. You lean against a clay wall in the market quarter, squinting through the late afternoon haze. It's that warm hour when the sun bakes everything in amber, and the scent of roasted garlic and drying fish begins to blend with street dust and sweat. But amid the din of trade and shouting vendors, one particular stall catches your eye. Not for its size or color, but for its unusual wares, bundles of twigs, small stone bowls, and shiny bits of bone tied with reeds. Welcome to the sweet breath economy. Yes, in a civilization famed for its temples and tombs, there existed a thriving microeconomy centered around the humble human mouth. The vendor in front of you, a leathery man with 6 visible teeth, none of them particularly encouraging gestures to his best-selling item. A palm-sized packet of dried mint leaves, ash-powdered natron, and something that might be lizard tail freshens breath he rasps. removes sin. You buy one anyway, why not? Next to him, a younger woman sells chew sticks, dipped in honey and lime, pre-softened for delicate mouths. She calls them date night brushes with a wink. You don't have a date, you buy two, and down the lane, a boy no older than 10 hawks kiss stones, small, smooth pebbles, soaked in clove oil and wrapped in linen. One is already in his mouth as he speaks, which is probably not hygienic, but admittedly charming. You buy three. Historians still debate how widespread these oral products were. They were status symbols, niche remedies, or genuine daily staples. Some argue that only the elite could afford the more exotic mixtures, like powdered pearl or imported cinnamon. Others believe that even farmers kept a stick tucked behind the ear just in case a social opportunity came calling. You pass a barber surgeon sharpening a hooked instrument with a gleam in his eye and pause to watch a customer nervously open wide. The man winces as the barber prods at a molar with a small bronze pick, then pops in a rinse of sour wine and salt. Behind him, a girl organizes a tray of dental powders labeled in hieratic scrawl, each one promising something vague and miraculous. One reads, "For the kiss of the gods." You don't ask what that means. You just nod politely and move on. There are even whispered rumors of a black market trade in tooth amulets. Tiny carved teeth blessed by temple scribes, meant to ward off rot and pain. Some wear them on necklaces. Others tuck them in linen pouches under their robes. One man swears his great-grandfather never lost a tooth, thanks to a spell-etched dog molar passed down for generations. Of course, he adds he died of a camel kick, but never a toothache. And as strange as it sounds, it makes sense. In a world without dentists as we know them, every superstition becomes a lifeline. Every ritual becomes a routine. Every chew stick is a chance at avoiding the agony of a rotting jaw. You try one of your new breath pebbles. It tastes like old sandals dipped in clove water, but your mouth does feel interesting, tingly, less offensive perhaps. You glance around at the bustling crowd and catch someone's eye. They don't recoil. That's progress. By now the sun is lower. A breeze stirs the linen of your tunic. You tighten the string of your herb pouch and wonder what modern toothpaste would feel like. Minty foam, plastic bristles, electric buzz. But maybe that's not so different from now, just people trying to feel clean, smell nice, and avoid being the one others talk about for the wrong reasons. And so you walk home through the winding streets of Thebes, your pouch a little lighter, your breath a little fresher, your outlook maybe 2% more optimistic. The sun has begun its slow, molten descent behind the mud brick rooftops. Shadows stretch long, the world shifting from white hot to amber, from blistering to bearable. You drift through a part of town growing quieter, with each step less market, more memory. You reach a narrow path winding toward the edge of the necropolis, where the city of the living meets the city of the dead. Not a somber place exactly, more prepared, thoughtful, calm in the way that only those who've made peace with permanence can be. And here you see it, a man kneeling beside a tomb, packing items carefully into a long wooden box. You recognize the objects immediately: a jar of tooth powder, a chew stick polished smooth from use, a tiny bronze scraper. Even a scrap of linen is still faintly scented with mint and some oil you can't name. Grave goods for the journey. You stop nearby, not speaking, but the man notices you. He doesn't mind your presence. Instead, he gestures gently toward the box. She always brushed, he says, every morning, even when her hands shook. You nod. The ancient Egyptians believed in continuity. That is what you needed in life. You'd need in the afterlife too. Food, clothing, music, and yes, clean teeth. You've seen paintings of the dead receiving offerings of bread and wine. Why wouldn't they want their chew stick too? Some tombs have even yielded packets of dental tools, lovingly stored in linen with signs of wear. Frayed fibers, powder, residue, toothpick tips, nibbled slightly flat. You can almost imagine the moment of packing family members deciding, yes, Aunt Merritt should have her favorite stick. She hated the new ones. Historians still debate whether these were functional or symbolic gestures. Was it a way to equip the spirit or to comfort the living? A bit of both, most likely. You help the man lift the box into the tomb's antechamber. It rests beside jars of honey, dried figs, and a bundle of perfumed linen. There's also a small mirror and a comb. Whoever she was going into eternity looking respectable. And maybe, just maybe, kissable. You sit outside the tomb entrance afterward, watching the horizon turn orange then violet. The desert sighs with the first hints of night air. You feel the dryness in your mouth again, the familiar tingle in your gums. You reach behind your ear where the ivory stick still waits. You chew, slowly, thoughtfully. Nearby, a child lights a small offering candle. The flame sputters, then steadies. You can smell the resin burning myrrh, most likely. A scent is so old it folds time into itself. Someone begins to sing softly. A lullaby for the dead. Or maybe for a living. You think about your mouth. It's been through a lot today, but it's clean. Or as clean as it's going to get in this world of grit and smoke and prayers. And you spit quietly into the sand and rub your jaw. The soreness is almost gone. In its place, a kind of gratitude for chew sticks, for crushed pebbles, for every strange, stubborn thing humans have done to hold back the slow erosion of time. And you realize something: this wasn't just about hygiene. It was about hope. That breath could be sweet. That smile could be preserved. That the walk home is slow. The air has cooled, but not by much. It's the kind of cooling that feels earned, not given. You follow a familiar footpath along the edge of a canal where frogs sing their dusty lullabies and date palms sway just enough to rustle secrets. Your mouth still tastes faintly of resin and dusk. Ahead, lamps begin to glow behind lattice windows. Someone is pounding lentils with a stone mortar. Another household is setting out mats for sleep. You pass a girl humming to herself as she dunks a bundle of reed sticks in a jar of something fragrant. She scrubs one across her teeth, glances at you, and gives a sleepy little wave. Her mouth is full of foam and flowers. You wave back. At your doorway, you pause to rinse with warm water left out in a jug since morning. It tastes like clay and air, but it works. You swish spit, then sit on the threshold and look up at the stars, beginning to appear like shy gods, blinking into view. The sounds around you are low now, familiar with the brush of cloth, the clink of jars, a mother's whisper, a dog's half-hearted bark. You chew your ivory stick for one last clean sweep across your molars, and it hits you how many small acts today were centered around this one thing: your mouth. Cleaning it, soothing it, feeding it, preparing it for everything from prayers to food to affection to you think of the man with the abscess, the girl with her breath ritual, the priest with his tongue-scraping cloth. You think of Ramses and his hollow molar, of the murals where everyone smiles like they've never bitten a stone in their bread. You think of the chew stick you used in the temple, the one in your ear now, and the golden toothpick you never got to try. And as you lean your head back and breathe through a mouth that feels finally honestly your own, you begin to wonder, if people cared this much for their teeth, what else did they honor in small, invisible ways? Historians might still argue about their methods, whether the powders helped, whether the chewing worked, whether mouse bones were genius or madness. But you've seen enough today to know one thing. They tried, with sticks, with ash, with oil and patience, with rituals whispered at dawn and powders applied in twilight. Not for praise, not for vanity, but because they believed the mouth mattered. Those words and kisses and prayers deserved a clean passage. Those smiles, even sore imperfect ones, were worth protecting. You feel sleep tugging at the edge of your mind, now slow and soft. The frogs continue their song. Somewhere down the street, someone is rinsing a basin for tomorrow's first chew. The world is resetting again. You stand stretch and step inside your home. You leave your chew stick near your sleeping mat. You dim the lamp and you let go. Wind down approx 300 words. And now as the stars settle gently into their places above the Nile, your body too begins to soften. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw relaxes. You notice how the air feels cooler now against your skin, the weight of the day lifting like dust, carried away by the evening breeze. Something is comforting in the rhythm of ordinary things, in the way people long before us cared for their lives in quiet, deliberate acts. Chewing sticks, mixing powders, rinsing gently before prayers, not to impress, not to perform, but to participate in something larger than themselves, routine ritual and rest. You imagine your breath now easy and calm, moving through a clean mouth across relaxed teeth, down into a chest that rises and falls with the hush of night. The sky above Egypt was the same sky you know, now velvety immense, and filled with the same promise of another day, another morning. You've traveled far tonight, through stone courtyards and shadowed temples, through markets, tombs, and secret smiles. You've walked barefoot across time. And now it's enough. Let the world outside quiet itself. Let the memories settle like sand at the bottom of a jar. Let your dreams rise slow and cool like river mist. You're safe, you're still, and your breath is clean.